Can anyone confirm? Can you see my screen?
Yes, Usha.
Yes, Usha, you can continue.
Okay, got it. So thanks everyone for joining the session. So today I'm going to talk about Studio Web Instant Start to Automation. So let me quickly introduce myself. My name is Usha Kiranmai. I have overall 6+ years of IT experience, in which 4+ years of experience as an RPA developer. So throughout the RPA journey, few of my achievements are I'm a most valuable professional for the year 2023, UiPath certified professional, UiPath community tech speaker, UiPath forum robot master, and the UiPath community blogger. So just scan this QR code to connect with me on the LinkedIn, or you can search by my name, Usha Kiranmai, in the LinkedIn page, so that we can connect and then see how we can help each other. Now, I would like to thank Niklesh for giving me this great opportunity and organizing this kind of amazing event. And the moderators for this session, Harika and then Sharvaree, for making sure the things are going well and then making this event so successful. Extending my thanks to a UiPath community and Bot Infinite Solutions for encouraging and then providing this kind of collaborative event, so which helps the community to grow better. So let's talk about today's agenda. So we are going to look into the Studio Web and then integration service, and we'll jump into a Studio Web deep dive, followed by document understanding, and finally demo and question and answer. So before I start with the next slide, so let me turn off my camera and then so that I can focus on my slides. Perfect. So this Studio Web is specifically made for the users who wants to automate the online applications. So online applications in the sense like Microsoft Outlook, SharePoint, OneDrive, Google Drive, right? Now the question is, who are the users can use the Studio Web? So the Studio users can use it, the Studio X users can use it, the Studio Pro users can also use it, right? So irrespective of the technical background, so everyone can access the Studio Web and they can start their coding. Perfect. Now let's quickly move on to our next slide. Cloud robot serverless. So this terminology we oftenly listen and which is associated to a Studio Web, right? So whenever we hear about Studio Web, so there is something called cloud robot serverless. So what actually does it mean? We will see it now. So cloud robot serverless is used to help the, or I would say help to run the background automations. Again, what are background automations, guys? So the automations which does not interact, or I would say which does not use any UI interaction activities, right? So such automations are called a background automations. And to run those automations, we can use a cloud robot serverless. And there is one more important word here, serverless. So what actually does it mean? So it means that you need not to maintain any physical server. You need not to maintain any container. You don't need to worry about the memory space and all. So then how we will get those things? So UiPath will be taken care of it, right? So UiPath will be taken care of it. They will be providing the entire thing. You just have to configure in the orchestrator. That's it. It's done. So the next thing is you can go ahead with your automation. So that is the capability of cloud robot serverless, right? And the important thing is, so here, robot units must be available on the tenant to work with what? To work with the cloud robot serverless. Remember this point. Getting it? So now you have learned what is cloud robot serverless and what is the usage of it and how we have to actually, handle the things with this specific concept. Now let's quickly move on to our next slide. So most of the people ask this question, is Studio Web necessary? Well, I will talk about 4 points, then you decide, okay? So the very first one is, I don't need to install anything. All I have to do is just access the browser, or I would say automation cloud, and then go to a Studio Web, and then I can start my work. And the second point I would say, if you are a person who is working on the different machine every day or different operating system every day, so assume today I'm working on the Windows operating system. Tomorrow I'm going to work on the Linux. Day after tomorrow I'm going to work on the Mac OS, right? So now in this case, how the Studio Web will be useful, guys? So let me tell you. So when you are working on a Windows operating system, access the Studio Web, start your coding, and you can pass it to Studio or Studio X. and then do some other coding. So once or before you leave the day, again push the developed code to a Studio Web. So this is something act like a Git. Okay, so you can push the code back to a Studio Web. And the next day, if you're working with a other operating system, what the thing you have to do? So you can access the Studio Web through browser, correct? And then you download the code from it, and you can work on it. Again, you can repeat the same set of steps. So this is how it will be useful. And the next point I would say, today at studio level, we are facing a lot of issues while we are working with Outlook, right? Or SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Drive. So we have to provide some client ID and the secret key and all those stuff. So which leads to a lot of issues. Now with Studio Web, those issues can be resolved. So how that can be done? Because the Studio Web is not using any UI interaction activities to automate the actions in such kind of applications. Getting it? So it uses the activities, but everything happens in the background. You need not to worry. So because of this thing, so at the end of the day, so there is a important advantage called cost saving. And also, since we are not using any UI interaction activities to automate the Google Drive or other kind of applications, so it improves accuracy and it tends to improve the customer experience. So this is what we are looking for at the end of the day, right? So this is the advantages of Studio Web. Now you are at a better position. So why I have to go for a Studio Web? Very nice. Now let's go to our next slide. Now we will see integration service. Now you may ask, Usha, this is Studio Web session, not an integration service session. So why you are talking about integration service? I will let you know. Hold on, guys. Hold on for 1 minute. So what are the applications that we are trying to connect? So before that, so what I had told about Studio Web. So it is used to automate the actions in online applications like Outlook, SharePoint, or OneDrive, etc. So to automate such kind of actions, so we have to configure that application right? So now how the configuration is happening because of the integration service. Appreciate yourself because you learned a new thing today. Getting it? So the establishing of the connection with the applications is happening with the integration service. So behind the scenes, the integration service is playing an important role. But what are the people will be thinking, so everything is doing by the Studio Web. No, it's not. So the establishment of the connection to our application is happening with the integration service. Perfect. So since we have started the integration service, so let us know what are the tabs present in it, okay? So the very first tab is connector. So connector in the sense like if you want to connect to a Google Drive, how do we connect? Using this connector. If you want to connect to a SharePoint, how do you connect? Using this connector, right? So you can see the list of connectors are available in this tab. And the next one is connections. So in the connections tab, you can see what are the connections that you have already established with different applications. Okay. And the next one, triggers tab. So we can run the automations based on a couple of triggers. So what type of triggers, Usha? I will let you know. So when a file created in Google Drive or when a file deleted in SharePoint or something like when a something like when a file updated in OneDrive, right? So based upon these actions, we can run our automation. Getting it? So now you have learned a new thing, which is not only the orchestrated triggers helps to trigger or run the automations, but also the triggers in the integration service also helps to run the automation. So this is the new thing that you might have learned today. So again, appreciate yourself, guys. So now let's quickly move on to the next step. Now again, back to a Studio Web. Now, what are the categories that I can work with Studio Web? We will see now. Okay, so these are only the few categories, but a lot more categories present in the Studio Web and a lot more coming also in the future releases. Now we will focus on the important ones. So you can work with Google Workspace, you can work with Microsoft 365, you can work with document understanding, and also you can automate UI applications using Studio Web. So don't assume that Studio Web is only for automating online applications. It also uses to automate UI applications. Okay. And then you can work with data service and the Twilio. And stay tuned for more, categories in the upcoming releases. Now we will see what are components available in the Studio Web. So before we actually go for deep diving into a Studio Web, so we just have to know the basic things, right? So that is what we are doing right now. So we will see the components. The very first one is the templates tab. So this templates tab displays the list of predefined templates. All you have to do is just reuse the template and then avoid developing the code from scratch. And the next tab is projects tab. So it will going to display what are the projects that you have created. And the next tab is automations. So what are the projects that you have published to orchestrated? So that list will be showing in the automations tab. And the next one is runs. So it will be going to show what are the automations that you ran and what is the success of it so that you can see it in the runs tab. And finally, the connections tab. So here it will display the list of what are the applications or the connection, establishment of connection to our application happened. So that list will display here. Now, where is this list coming from? This list is coming from again the integration service. I have already told you guys, right? So the connection establishment with the application is happening through an integration service. So whatever we did there, so that list will be displaying in the connections tab. Perfect. Now, this is the important thing. Focus on it because we have a quiz session at the end. So if you are trying to get the goodie, so we must remember every important point. So what are the types of triggers available in the Studio Web? The first one is manual, right? So the name itself says, so it is used to trigger the automations manually. And the next one is time-based. Again, we can understand based upon the name. So the automations can be run based on some predefined schedule time. And the next one is event-based. So it runs the automations based on specific events. So what are those events? I will let you know. Wait for a minute. So now this is pretty common. So we are very familiar with the manual automation, or I would say this manual studio web automation, because every day we are doing the same thing in our studio, Studio X, and some other platforms. Now let's focus on the second and the third trigger. Okay, time-based and then event-based. So using time-based triggers, so we can build a time-based automation. Getting it, guys? So if we look at the screenshot here, the moment I select the time, I would say I select the frequency or the time. So whatever is comfortable for you. So it displays the list of preview, right? So if you see 6:55, 7:75, so there is a 5 minutes gap in between. So this list actually increase or make sure the automation will going to run as expected with the defined time. Okay. Now the next thing is, what are the use cases that we can do using this time-based automation or the time-based triggers? So very simple use case I will tell you. So if you want to download a report for every 5 to 10 minutes, or if you want to update a file for every 5 to 10 minutes, then simply go ahead with this type of trigger. Now you may ask a question, Usha, there is already orchestrated triggers present. So why should I go for this trigger? That's a good question. So assume guys, if there are hundreds of automations already present in your orchestrator, and if you're trying to create another job which runs for every 5 to 10 minutes, it will go into conflict, right? So it creates a conflict with the other automations. So do you think it's a best practice? And if the automation doesn't run as expected time, so business will going to give you some sweets, right? So do you want to, I know those sweets are really sweet, but still, so that's very hard to accept, right? So think of that scenario. So in that case, this time-based automation, so which uses a time-based trigger, will help you a lot. Now let's quickly move on to the next slide. So now we will see the event-based automation, so which uses the event-based trigger, right? So we have already seen the different types of triggers. Now what actually does? So these automations runs when a external event happens in an online application, like when a new email arrives to Outlook, or when a file updated in OneDrive, or when a folder deleted in SharePoint, or when an invoice created in Workday, or when a ticket created in ServiceNow, or something happens in the Salesforce. So based upon these actions, so we can run the event-based automation. Now, this is the most important concept in every platform, right? So workflows reusability. Now we will see how the Studio Web workflows can be reusable. So the very first option is templates, correct? So you can use a predefined templates. So that actually avoids developing the code from scratch. And next one is submit as template. You can always build a workflow and then submit as a template so that your entire team can use it. And the next one is sharing option is always available, but remember this point, the sharing is only possible to the users who have already access to a orchestrator. You can't share with the public users. And the next one is opening desktop option helps you to open the Studio Web workflow or pass Studio Web workflow to the Studio or the Studio X. Getting it? And finally, the download option helps you to download the Studio Web workflow to your local. Very nice. So these are the different options. You can reuse the Studio Web workflow. Now this is for DU lovers, especially Studio Web document understanding. So today at studio level, we are facing a lot of issues. I would say not issues, but it is very complex, right? So using taxonomy manager and then doing a lot of steps classification, extraction. But when coming to a Studio Web document understanding, you have to just classify, extract, validate, save. That's it. No taxonomy manager, no package installation. It's like a wow, right? And also it provides an advantage, like it provides a flexibility where you can also use a predefined ML models or custom ML models. And also you can use a gen capabilities in document, Studio Web document understanding. So that is how it is currently working. Generative capabilities. Getting it? So now let's quickly move on to one next slide. Now you may ask a question, Usha, is there any other way? Is there any other way that must be an easiest way for me to create a document understanding workflow in Studio Web? Yes, there is a way using extraction, automation, builder feature. Okay, so now what you can do is upload an invoice, upload a document so that it will going to create the Studio Web workflow for you guys. Very nice, pretty interesting, right? So now here a question comes. So can I upload only the single invoice or multiple invoices? Multiple invoices are not supporting at the moment. So you have to upload only the single invoice through which it will going to create a Studio Web work. So this is all about a extraction automation builder. Very nice. Now we will see the dev and demo time. Okay. And before that, I have a question for you. That question is, do you find this session interesting? Do you find this session interesting? If yes, comment S in the chat box. And if no, also comment S in the chat box. Do you find, I see a lot of responses coming up. Thank you so much. Still a lot of people has to respond in the chat. So do you find this session is interesting? If yes, comment S in the chat box. If no, also comment S in the chat box. I'm just kidding. So I know you guys might have a questions. So we have a Q&A session at the end. So then we will discuss. Okay. So now we will see some of the, practical things about the Studio Web. So the very first thing that you have to do is access the automation cloud. So you might be already learned about the orchestrator in our previous sessions, right? So log into cloud.uipath.com. So once you log in, just click on this button and then go to a Studio Web. So now let me close this tab. So once you go to a Studio Web, you can see a designer panel. So where actually you can create a projects and all. So I have already created a workflows because we don't have enough time to go through each and every activity. So I have already created a workflow. So I will be help you to walk through those. And meanwhile, we will be also learning how to create a Studio Web workflow. Don't worry, okay? So I am not going to leave you until I explain how to create a Studio Web workflow. Very nice. Now, the next question before we go to a next question, sorry, before we go to a next topic. So I have a other question for you. So what is my first question? So do you find this session interesting? So most of the people have responded very nice. And my next question is, are you plan to watch movies during the weekend? If yes, comment S in the chat box. If no, also comment S in the chat box. The question is, are you planned for watching movies during the weekend? So someone says no, maybe they have some other things, maybe chatting with girlfriend and all. Very nice. Thank you guys. Whatever question that I asked, so you're responding very well. Thank you so much for that. So this is just for making the session as collaborative as possible. Since it is a weekend, I see, a lot of people might feel bored. So just to make them active, we are, asking this kind of questions. Okay, now let's get into the topic. So as like I said, I have already created a workflow, but now I'm going to show you how to create a Studio Web workflow. Before that, so we have already discussed the types of triggers, right? So now we have three types of triggers: manual, time-based, event-based. Remember this, okay? Manual, time-based, event-based. Now, so this workflow is related to event-based workflow. So now what I have done, so I will just give a overview. So then we will talk about, in detail. So since this are event-based, what I have told about event-based case, so whenever any action happens in an online application, like folder created or something like file updated, so the workflow has to trigger, right? So now this one we have created, or I would say this workflow has created for to trigger the folder creation in Google Drive. So let me open the Google Drive so that you will be getting more idea. Okay, so there are different folders, but these are not. So if any new folder got created under my drive folder, so then I want this automation to trigger. So that is my entire scenario. Okay, so for that I have taken a folder created activity. So how I have taken this activity, all I'm going to tell you, don't worry. So first I have taken a folder created activity, and then I have selected the folder. So whenever a new folder created under my drive, so my automation will going to trigger. So what I'm immediately doing, so I'm creating a new spreadsheet within that folder. Okay, so if you understand the basics, you will be like track anything, you will be able to build any complex workflows. So to understand the basics, so I have taken a very simple scenario. So if a new folder created, so immediately I want to create a new spreadsheet. So what I like to do is I have already published this workflow to Orchestrator. Okay, and then I'm going to test the scenario right now. So why you were testing it, Usha, without explaining? I have an answer. Okay, because the triggering would take time, so it would take 1 to 5 minutes to trigger the process. So in parallel, we can also complete the understanding of how the project can be created in the Studio Web, and by that time we can also look at the run. So things will go parallel so that we can save our time. So let me create a folder here. So let me say as just new folder, and then I just say as new. That's it. So the new folder got created, and this process must run. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. I have already told you that it would take 1 to 5 minutes to trigger the process, right? So meanwhile, we can start understanding like how we can create a workflow in Studio Web. Now let's go back to our Studio Web. Okay, let me go back here. The very first thing that you have to do once you open the Studio Web page is, you have to create a new project. So there is a new project button appears. So you have to create a new project and then give some proper name in the description, right? So proper naming convention is very, very important in real-time practices. Now we have to select the type of trigger from the drop down, right? So since the event based is very, very important in our real-time implementations, so let's go with it and then create. Okay, now the moment I click on create, it gives a list of page, I would say a list of categories, I would say, right? So now what I want to work here, so I want to create a folder, I would say I want to create a new file whenever a new folder got created in my Google Drive. Okay, so you may ask, Usha, you have already running that process, but you don't know, right? So how to build it? So let's understand that first, then you would be able to build some complex workflows. So my entire scenario is, I want to create a new spreadsheet. So the moment a new folder got created in my Google Drive. So this is my entire scenario. Okay, so for that, what I have to do? I have to select the Google workspace since I want to work with the Google activities or Google kind of like the scenarios based on the Google. So now we have to select a trigger activity. So let's say what is the first step that we have to do? Whenever a new folder created, right? So let's select this activity. And if you're not connected to the Google Drive application, so it will going to show you a connect button. But since we have already connected to a Google application, so by default it has taken it. Now we have to choose the monitored folder. Okay, under what folder? So if any new folder got created, so the parent folder we have to select. Very nice. And there are additional filters, like you can always give name, some specific name, and also something like the next step is output. Getting it? So this is the additional filters. If you want to, if you are looking for some specific name for the folder, then you can go with this option. Otherwise, you can ignore it. Now the next one is output. So it has two fields. The very first one is a created folder. So what this variable contains? So this variable contains the newly created folder details. Okay. And the next one is job data. So this contains, what is the robot that is currently executing and all those details. So currently we don't need this variable, but still let it be there. So my first activity is done. Now my next activity is, I want to create a new spreadsheet, right? Now just click on plus button to create a new activity. Okay. And what is my activity? So what I want to perform, I want to create a spreadsheet. So if you're really aware of the activity names, just search for it. Otherwise, come down and you can search by category. So let's select the Google Workspace, and then it will give you all the activities available in it. And we want an activity called create spreadsheet. So now let's go for it. Select it. Very nice. Okay, fine. So the run has already completed. So let me show you this. If you see, started 1 minute ago. Okay, ended 1 minute ago. So we missed this run, but it has started and also ended. Now let's quickly check the output, guys. So what is the output that we are actually expecting? A new spreadsheet has to be created in this folder. Now let's see, is it created or no? Very nice. So it got created. So this is the magic with event-based automation. So it is pretty interesting, right? So without using any UI elements or something like that, everything happens in a background, right? So it's just based upon some actions. Now you may ask a question, Usha, so is this feature is not available in Studio or Orchestrator right now? No. So this feature is not available in either Studio or the Orchestrator. So we have time-based triggers, we have queue-based triggers, and we can also see API triggers, but the event-based triggers only available in the Studio Web. You might feel very surprising, right? So let's quickly close this. Okay, and then since we are done with the scenario, let me delete it. Once we're done with the scenario, let's remove it so that we will be very clear. Very nice, guys. So now we have seen how the event-based automation runs, right? So it has started a couple of minutes and the run is also complete. So we just missed the run, but anyway, we have seen the output, right? So now let's go back to our Studio Web workflow and then learn how we can build the workflow. Okay. So now we have we have checked the first step. Now let's quickly jump to our second step. So we want to create a spreadsheet. So for that, the default connection is already exist. And now what we have to do is we have to select the folder. So in which folder this spreadsheet has to be created? So we have to select that folder. Now, do you think it is best practice to give the static folder every time? The folder name might change every time. So today it could be 123 and tomorrow it could be XYZ. So it is not best practice to give a static name. It is not best practice to store the just static name in a variable, right? So now how would we do that? So in our previous activity, if you see, there is a variable. I have already told you that, this variable contains a folder details. Now, can we reuse this variable? Yes, we can do that. Now let's do that. So let's click on the three, like lines and then say use variable. Okay. Say use variable. And then this is our first activity. So just click on it. You can see the two variables, select the first variable. So which has the folder details. That's it. So this is the way of dynamically passing the variable. And the other details like spreadsheet name, so it is up to you if you want to give a separate spreadsheet name or if you want to give a different sheet name, and all those details, it depends upon your requirement. But this is how we can create a Studio Web workflows. And if you have another activity to add, just click on this and then, add another activity. And important point I would like to mention here is the right side, there is something called data manager panel, right? And if we look here, I haven't created any variables. I haven't created any variables manually, but you see there were 2 variables already comes by default. What is this? Where these are coming? Is this coming from heaven or what? No, guys. If you're already aware of automatic variables creation concept in Studio, you must be knowing this. Okay. So in Studio Web, along with the activities, the variables will also be comes by default. All you have to do is just reuse this variable how we did here. Usha, I don't want to reuse. I want to create new. Okay, just go ahead and create. Who stops you? Right? So if you don't want to reuse the variable, just go ahead and then create the variable and then use. So this is how we can work with, how we can build the Studio Web workflow. Correct? So now let's go back to a Studio Web again. Studio Web page. And if you want to know more in detail, so I have written a blog on how to process Outlook emails using the Studio Web. So I will be sharing that link even in the chat. So just go ahead and then look into it. So it has step by step in detail, how you can process the Outlook emails using Studio Web. Again, that is a background automation. Okay. So now we have learned 2 things, guys. The very first one is how to build a workflows, and the next one is how the event based automation would work. Very nice, right? So appreciate yourself because you are learning these things even during weekends, right? So now let's quickly move to the next type of trigger, which is time based trigger, right? So I have already told you there are 3 types of triggers: event based, time based. Now we will be looking into a time based trigger. So what is my scenario? I will tell you. Okay, so this is the time trigger activity. Okay, the moment I select it, you see here, so we have to provide the time here. So for every 5 minutes or for every 1 hour, so you just have to provide the frequency of your time. And the moment I select it, it will show me the preview. So this actually gives me or makes me sure that this automation will going to run as expected. Getting it? And the important point is time zone. So by default, it will fix your tenant time zone, guys. Okay, so it is your responsibility to change the time zone according to your system. So whatever the system time zone is, so make sure you have the same time zone here, right? Now, okay, now I will talk about the scenario. Let me go back to a Google Drive. So I have 2 folders here, report generation and the report backup. So there is a report in the report generation folder. Okay, now for every 5 minutes, what I want to do is I want to copy the files from this folder. Okay, copy the files from this folder to a report backup folder. And then I want to clear the files in the source folder. So this is my scenario. Okay, getting it? So there are files present in this folder. So I want to copy these files to a report backup folder and then clear the report generation folder. So make it empty. So this is my scenario. Now we will look into that, guys. Okay. So for that, I have taken get list files. So I'm just performing the action, getting list of files from the Google Drive folder. Which folder? The source folder, which is report generation. Because why, you may ask a question, Usha, why you are getting a list of files? Because we don't know what files it has. We don't know what names the files has, right? So every day the files might change, the names might change. So we can't take everything as static. So that is not at all a best practice, guys. If you're doing that in your real-time implementation as well, avoid that from Monday because Sunday is optional. Okay. Now let's go back here. So that is why I'm getting a list of files from the Google folder. Okay, and then storing it in a variable here. So in the output variable. Now what I'm doing is I'm looping each file. Okay, I'm looping each file and then copying it to a destination folder. So what is my destination folder? The destination folder is report backup. So I'm copying to this folder. And what is the next step? I want to, clear the source folder, right? So that is why I'm deleting the files from the source folder. So once I copy it, just delete it. So this is what I'm doing. So I'm not going activity by activity because I have already told you how to build the workflows. I'm just explaining the important points. Okay, because we have also less time, right? So we have to consider that as okay. So this is all about it. So just getting the files from the source folder and then copying it to some destination folder and then clearing the files in the source folder. So this is my scenario. I have already published this workflow in Orchestrator just to save our time. So what I do is I will just enable the trigger. I will just enable the trigger. This is disabled right now and let me enable it. And this is a new point that you have learned. Always you can disable or enable the triggers. Okay, so especially when you were creating the event-based automations using Studio Web, there is an option to disable the trigger. So the way is just go to the event triggers and then click here. You can always disable. If you want, you can re-enable it. Getting it? So now let me go back here and then let me see how much time. So in another 3 minutes, it will going to run. So then we can see the output. So meanwhile, so what we do is go back here. Now it's time for DU lovers. Okay. Now we are going to see Studio Web document understanding. Hey, yes, Studio Web document understanding. So don't get much excited. So this is the workflow that I have built. In order to cover all these scenarios, we must have already the predefined workflows, right? Because, building everything in this session is impossible because it is only 1 hour session. So I have simply taken a manual trigger, guys. Okay, so I have simply taken a manual trigger. And then the very first thing that I'm doing is I'm getting invoice from the Google Drive. Okay, and also remember this point. So we have enabled the trigger. So it will going to run in another 2 minutes. We are going to look into the output and then we will enjoy. Okay. So now what here? So let me go back to a Google Drive. So here there is something called invoice processing folder. And there are 2 invoices here. So for this demo, so I am going to use this invoice. Using Studio Web document understanding, I'm going to extract the invoice number, total amount, and the table data. Using what? Not only just document understanding, but document understanding with the generative capabilities is pretty interesting here. So let's look into it. So the very first step that I'm doing is I'm retrieving invoice from the Google folder. So this invoice I want to get, right? So we can't say, hey, go and get that invoice, right? So we have to use some activities. I'm using activity and then retrieving this invoice. Very nice. Now, what is the next step? Classify document. So this is what we have talked. Don't miss, guys. So don't worry. I'm not going to miss any important points. Even I will not leave you without telling the important points. Okay. So here, the classifier type has to be selected as a generative classifier. Okay, generative classifier. The moment you select the generative classifier from the drop down, it gives you a prompt. So what this prompt says, so it has the key value paid. It has the key value paid. So in the key, I have mentioned invoice and I'm asking to a GPT, what is the type of the document? Usha, are you kidding? Are you asking to a GPT? You may think this might be your inner thoughts. But you know what? When I have started processing, so this request will be going back to, I would say, going to a custom GPT using APIs, and then your request will get processed and you will be getting the output. So that is why I have told I'm asking to a GPT. Okay. So now here I have given an invoice and then I'm asking what is the type of the document. So if it is invoice, if the workflow is able to predict that it is invoice, then it will going to return this value. So that is how you can identify, okay, this is invoice. If it is a not invoice, then what it will return, it returns unknown. You can handle that kind of, something like that kind of scenarios as well. Okay. And like the output, the classification of, I'm storing it in a variable. Okay. And the next important thing is a extraction part. Extraction part. So here again, I have selected the extractor as generative extractor, right guys? Generative extractor. So now Usha, there were already the predefined extractors. Why you can't go for it? Because those were non-customized, guys, non-customized. if you select the invoices, you can't customize the fields. Of course, these are the predefined ML models, but you can't customize the fields. You have to accept what it extracts. And since everything is running currently on the gen capability, so we are focusing on generative. Okay, select the generative extractor. Again, the same thing happens. So the moment I select the generative, so it gives you a prompt. And here I'm extracting the invoice number, total amount, and the table data. Okay, now you may ask a question, Usha, so every time we have to follow the same format of the question. So it depends completely on your requirement and it depends on the invoice. Okay, so sometimes we can extract the data using this. Sometimes you might have to change the format. So that is, you have to plug and play with the different things. So perfect. So let's go back to an orchestrator, guys. Okay, previously we have talked about what? Time-based automation, right? Now, if look at this, the time-based automation has just ran. So let me show you the time has just ran. So this is the one. So it has started a minute ago and then ended a minute ago. So now let's look at the output. I will go to my drive and then report generation. So this is the source folder. So where the file is. So it went somewhere. So where it went? So it went to a destination folder called report backup. And we have cleared the files in the source folder. So this is how the time-based automation would work. So is it using any UI interaction activities? Is it using some other things? No, everything happens in the background, correct? So this is pretty interesting. Let's go back to jobs and then let me disable the trigger. Otherwise, it will going to run in another 2 minutes, right? So since we are done with the scenario, so it's just to maybe good thing to disable it. Very nice. Now we have learned 3 things. The very first one is we have learned how the event-based automation works, and we have learned how to create a project in Studio Web. Now we have also learned how the time-based automation would work, correct? Now, again, push your mind back to a document understanding. So here, these are the fields that we are extracting, guys. And if you see, we are extracting the table data this way. So it's not possible to say that, okay, so can you extract the table data? That doesn't work. So we have to follow this format in order to extract the table data. Getting it? So now the extraction results is storing in a variable. Very nice. Now let's run this process and then we will see the output. And one more important thing is in the classification activity, okay, so in the classification activity, there is something called confidence. So based upon the confidence, you can also classify the document. So you can give the required confidence here. So if it is 70 above, then only accept it, otherwise ignore it, right? So sometimes, if there might be some wrong predictions. So even some invoices might, some documents might contain invoice word. So because of that, the bot or the workflow would identify it as an invoice. So there might be some wrong predictions can happen. So in that case, to avoid such kind of conflicts or such kind of failures, you can also take the minimum confidence as a reference value. Okay, so this is all about it. So now let's quickly run this workflow. So I'm going to click on test. And the process has started. And you can see the status is here, ran successfully, and now it is currently working on the classification. So it ran successfully and then now it is working on the extraction part. And if you see here, if we look at the output, so the execution is done. So let me review the output. So the document type is invoice. So it was able to identify the given document type is an invoice. I have already told you guys, right? So what I have told you, so there is something called key value pair. So if it is invoice, then it will going to return this key. So that is what it has done here. Okay, and then if you see here, it has extracted the values. It has extracted the, let me copy and then go here and then paste it in the notepad so that you can see it very clear. So it has extracted, let me remove the unnecessary data. It has extracted the invoice number and the total amount and also the table data, right? So item computer quantity 1, rate 500 and amount is 500. Now let me quickly check. Item computer quantity 1, rate 500 and the amount is 500. Very nice. So it has extracted all the fields. So this is how we can actually work with the Studio Web document understanding. All you have to do is just go ahead and then use generative capabilities. No taxonomy manager, no package installation. So it's a wow, right? So now we are done with the document understanding. Very nice. Now the next important thing is extraction automation builder. So we will going to see. Okay. So for that, just click on this button here and then go to a document understanding here. So you can see in the left side. So just click on it. And so here we have landed. And now go to create automation. Okay. Now it asks you to create a or upload a file. Now what we will do is just click on it. Okay. And then I have already a file on my desktop, the same invoice that I have just showed. This is the invoice I've just showed, right? The same invoice present in my desktop. So I have selected that. And if you see, it will going to detect the document type and it will going to create a workflow for you. So it has detected the document type as invoice. And then let's create a work. So this is how it will be going to create a workflow. Then the only thing that you have to do is just make the required code changes according to your requirement and you should be good from there. So if you see, this has created a couple of activities like storage file and then extract document data, validate document data. So just remove the unnecessary ones and then you can always select the necessary activities and then do some the code changes if you need it. So it's just to adjust according to your requirements. Getting it? So this is how you can actually work on the extraction automation builder. Perfect. So very nice. So we have covered almost all the topics. Now let's go back to a Studio Web. And the most important thing that I would like to tell you is, so in the upcoming releases, we have something called Copilot is coming for the Studio Web, right? So even you don't need to create any project. So just ask to the Copilot, hey, can you create this workflow? Yes, the Copilot says, I'm going to create it for you, right? So it will just create a workflow. So as like I showed now how the extraction automation builder is working, right? So it just creates a workflow. So just do a code changes. And another pretty interesting thing is you need not to write any expressions as well. So currently we have to write some string expressions, right? So let's say if you want to print some date, you have to say something like, date time dot now dot to string and blah, blah, blah. So that can be also avoided using the Copilot. You can ask the Copilot, hey, can you create an expression? Yes, it will going to create that expression for you. So that release is also coming in the future, maybe in the starting of 2024. So then we can avoid the complete manual effort that we are doing with our current automations. Perfect. Very nice. Now let me quickly go back to a slide. And before that, let me show you something. So if you want to know, okay, if you want to know more on the generative capabilities, so I have already a video on it. Have already a video, that got published in the community page. So let me open it for you. So this is the video on the detailed understanding of the generative classifier and the extractor. So you can go for it and then you can learn more things. And if you're looking for something use case on the Studio Web, so I have already published a blog on it in the UiPath community blog. So let me share that link here. So if you don't have this link, so just type in the Google Usha, okay, Usha Kiranmai UiPath blog. So it will take you to a right page. So this is my blog page. And if you see, there is something called UiPath Studio Web for Outlook processing. So it has the detailed steps how you can perform the actions in your real-time implementation, starting from creating a workflow to publishing a workflow and then enabling or disabling that trigger. Very nice. So we are done with everything. So let me go back to my slides. So we're done with the demo. And If you are a person who is trying to stay ahead with the tool, then prefer these UiPath sources. The first one is Academy. So just go through our Academy, and then you will have a chance to learn a lot more by following the videos. And the next one is Forum. So you can always have an opportunity to utilize it, and also in turn you can give back to the users, right? So if you share something, you get more something. So don't hesitate to help the users in different automation problems, so that it also helps you back to improve your something like RPA skills. And the next one, community events. Please do register for the Hyderabad chapter, so we have a lot more sessions coming in the future. Questions time. Any questions? You can unmute, I guess, and then you can ask. If you have any feedback, you can also provide that feedback as well. Don't have a questions? Everyone is got tired with the session? Okay, so there is something called how to open these in Studio. So there is something called open in Desktop Studio. Okay, so if you don't have a Studio installed, so now it will ask you to download. If you have already the Studio present in your system, so it simply opens that Studio. This is how it actually gonna work. And also it says, uh, you know, it saves this file into your local folder. Thank you, Sandeep, for giving a great feedback. So I'm glad that you got an idea on the Studio Web. So how to schedule jobs in Orchestrator using Studio. So this is something related to the Studio, but I'm happy to help out. So there is something called triggers tab, right? So there are two types of triggers: time triggers and the queue triggers. So if you want to run the automations, then just go for a time trigger. Just click on this button and give some name and select the process, right? So select the process, and then you have to select the robot account and the machine mapping. So if you want to run on the matching with robot account and the machine mapping, if not, then you can leave it, so that whatever the server is available, whatever the robot is available, so that will going to pick up the process. And the next one is make sure you have the tenant time zone, and here you can actually select so when you want to run the automation, and finally click on add. That's it. So this is all about the time trigger. And the next one is queue trigger. So this actually runs the automation based upon the items in the queue, correct? So again, the same process here. So just click on the queue trigger, and then say here test again, and select the process name from the drop down, and just select the run times, and then select the machine and the robot account, and finally select the queue from this. So since there are no queues in my what we call orchestrator right now, so it says no results found. But if there are queues, then you have to select the respective one, and just make sure you have the right time zone, and then click on it. That's it. Thank you so much, everyone. Your feedback is very important to us, not only in terms of boosting, but also it will help us something called to give more sessions in the future. Okay, so can we move on to a quiz session? Are you ready, guys? It's a quiz time. Let me go back to a Mentimeter. Get ready for the quiz session. And let me click on the present. And I guess the team has already posted the Mentimeter link, and then the code.
Line lo undu. Hello, Usha, can you go there for these photos? You didn't do that. So do photos first. Yeah. In between, people will join also. Yeah. I gave the option for everybody.
So do you want me to turn on the camera?
Yeah, you close this screen share and everybody you can on the video and somebody can take the picture and yeah we can then jump into the final one. Yeah, everybody like do that for 1 30 seconds. Then I see some of the other MVPs join the call. Jobin, thank you so much, brother, for joining the call. Yeah. So anybody team like Sharvaree, you want to on the camera and take some one photo?
Yes,
Yes.
Niklesh.
Any other people who are available on camera and take the picture, please. Yeah, I think it was a wonderful session, Usha. Many of you understand that, and yeah, it's a final photo, Satish. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we are good. Yeah, I know you are enthusiastic about the quiz and the goodies. So final day. So all the very best for the final winners. So let's see who will be the targeting. So over to you, team again. Yeah, please continue. You can off the videos, everybody, and you focus on the quiz. All the best.
Hope everyone can see my screen. So I have a question to Praharsha. So I see that you are joining from the day one session, Praharsha. So do you have any questions? Are you comfortable with the session? Do you have any feedback that you would like to share with the community? If you want to talk, you can unmute and talk. Yep.
Yeah, hey, this is Parasha.
Hey, hi, how you doing?
I'm good. So I've been daily attending the sessions and got to know some new things. Means like I'm mostly not that to Studio Web and triggers and all that, but the other stuff like automation hub and all that, I was a little new to document and stuff. I mean,
Oh,
yeah, all that I was a little new to, so I got to know a little bit. And some people may think I may be too young for this RP. I'm actually 12 years old, not even graduated yet. So,
yeah. So the people can identify that actually, by looking at your face.
yep. And I have 2 years of experience in RP surprisingly. So,
Oh my God. This is so surprising.
mostly I'm into UiPath Studio, and also the one thing which helped me a little means I've gotten in some types of errors. So in the apps class, it helped me. Means I got to know about VB and VB apps and all that. So that was a little interesting as well for me.
Great, great. Thank you, Praharsha, for sharing your thoughts. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I thank everyone, Nicholas sir, and all the moderators and speakers which are present here for the great session. Thank you.
So it looks like most of the people don't know how to use Mentimeter. So the very first thing that you have to do is just go to a mentimeter.com. So the link, the team has already provided in the chat, right? And then you just have to enter the code. That's it.
So team, link is in the chat window, and you need to click on the link and you need to give
Yeah.
the code there. Hope
There
all
were
are
already
doing.
28 participants. So be quick, guys.
Usha, can you share your screen of that Mentimeter QR code so that they can even scan using that code also?
Yeah, let me do that.
Guys, just go to Chrome and just scan the QR code and you will be able to log into that Mentimeter.
Just 29. Be real quick, guys. So if you're able to, earn some goodies during weekends, so that would be so great, right? Because you're spending a lot of time in understanding the session. And if you're also able to earn the goodies, so that gives you a different happiness. So why don't you just try? So I see there were 39 people, and here 29 people has only joined. Come on, real quick. Thirty, super good. So we are expecting some more number. Don't worry, once you're done, so we will no longer be taking any sessions. You just go ahead and then have your dinner, and then you can have a nice sleep. Just post the code. Have any issues in accessing the Mentimeter, please, in the chat box so that team can help you. $31, $32. Niklesh, can you suggest, can we start or can we wait for a few more people?
I think people are good. 32 people. I see 38, 40 people in the call. I think you can go ahead in between. People can start. Yeah, you can start, and Sharvaree and Harika, Usha, you can encourage them. Yes, you can go ahead.
So
For
get
coming to the question, you need to put enter. Okay, you know that. Okay, go ahead.
So choose the types of triggers available in the Studio Web. So we have already discussed. So the first one is manually automatic, time, queue, manual. or manually event-based, time-based. So we stressed on this point while we are going through the presentation, guys. So think carefully, use your brain, remember the points, and then select the option. Very nice. I see 21 people is successful, in selecting the right answer. Very nice response. Okay, just go to a leaderboard. Perfect. So there is Saroj Kumar Sabat and then Akshat. So these two people were in the top 2 positions. So come on, guys. The other people, come on real quick. So now I'm going to our next question. Get ready. Keep your hands on the mobile. Don't use any chat GPT. Okay. Oops, sorry. This is my bad. So now here we go. Does Studio Web also supports UI automation? False. Is it false or is it true? Or will it going to available in the future releases? Does Studio Web also supports UI automation? No. Yes. Or available in the future releases. Just recall the points that we have discussed. Perfect. So most of the people have selected true. Very nice. So just let's check the leaderboard. Amazing. So again, the first question is Saroj and the second question is Akshat. Pretty interesting, right? So again, get ready. Keep your hands on the mobile. So I will be revealing the next question. Question 3. Ready? Here we go. Extraction Automation Builder allows to create a Studio Web workflow based on what? Based on multiple invoices or based on single invoice or both? So we have discussed in detail about this. So I have already showed you the demo, how it is actually working. So can we upload multiple invoices or only single invoice or both A and B? 2 seconds, 1 second, done. Most of the people have answered the right answer. This actually tells you that you are listening to the session very carefully. Thank you so much, guys. So now let's check the leaderboard. Amazing. So I see the first position, second Saroj, and the next. Oh, this time so it has changed. So Ankit and then Akshat. Very nice. So both starts with A. Okay, now let's go to our next question. Ready? If not ready, get ready with your mobiles. Okay. And here we go. The fourth question, and there is only one question left. So that decides your goodies. And the question is, does Studio Web supports automatic variable creation concept? That means, will the variables creating along with the activities comes by default, or should we have to create the variables manually? The first option is no. Second option is yes, but need to enable some options. And the third option is just yes. 3, 2, 1, done. Very nice. Most of the people is answering the right answers. It's very glad to see that, guys. So now let's check the leaderboard. This time, who will be the first person and who are in the top 2? The first person is again Ankit. Oh, so this time again the shifted Manisha, and then the second portion is Akshat. So Akshat is always maintaining the consistent portion. Very good. This is the last question, so which decides your happiness for the weekend. So let's get into it. So I will be revealing the question. Get ready. Here we go. What type of ML models does Studio Web Document Understanding supports? Is it only custom ML models or cannot support any ML models, or will it going to support both predefined and the custom ML models? So we have discussed this point during our presentation. Is it supports only custom ML models or cannot support any ML model or both predefined and the custom ML model? Great. So I see 23 people have selected the right answer. Very nice, guys. So now let's check the leaderboard this time. So this decides you the final winners. So the very first position is Manisha. Congratulations. Oh, no. My bad. So it's PS Parvati. Congratulations. Oh, I guess she is the first position, and the next position goes to Akshat. So you can, you can send your email address. Sorry, not email address, your home address to a email ID. So that was already posted in the chat, so that you will be receiving the goodies very soon. That's all from my end. Niklesh, do you have anything to say? Niklesh, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Niklesh.
To all the winners, can you speak something like
Yeah, hi.
share your experience regarding the session? How was it and everything?
Hi, Niklesh. I'm PS Parvati. Yeah, hi, Usha.
Hey,
So,
Parvati.
Yeah,
yeah, so I'm working with UiPath from past 1.5 year. So
Yeah,
I'm from XT Global,
very
and
nice.
I got a lot more idea on Studio Web after your session. So I worked on Studio Web, and a lot more I have to work on. So your session will be really boosting my mind, and I'll be more working on Studio Web. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much, Parvati. So that means a lot
yeah,
to me.
For your feedback. Yes,
yeah.
Akshat, over to
Same
you.
here. It was wonderful session as well. I learned a lot from and Usha. Thank you very much for the interactive session. It was very interesting. You kept from beginning to ending to focus for all of us to be focused, and that really helped us in winning the quiz also. And not only yours, but throughout. Thank you, Nikhilesh, for all the 6 sessions. It was very informative. Learned a lot, and it will really help us in career as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Akshat, for your valuable feedback, and congratulations to you as well. So you have been consistently maintaining the second position in the quiz session. So that actually shows you how carefully you are listening to the session. So, yep, thank you so much.
So for the winners, please do send your complete address with the details, pin code, state to the email ID which is mentioned here, nikhil.rp@gmail.com. And also do write the LinkedIn post, like your feedback on LinkedIn, so it will help us better to perform well in the next sessions.
Yeah, so I would like to add a point here as well. Satish, so he's the person I see, he's joining from the session one, and he's actually collaborating with the team in asking the questions and all. So thank you, Satish. Thanks for your support. So keep giving the same support for the upcoming sessions as well. Thank you so much. And one more important thing is, guys, if you have any feedback, so please don't hesitate to write a 1 line or 2 lines of the LinkedIn post and then tagging us, so that not only you, the remaining team will also be knowing, right? So about about the efforts that the team is currently keeping. So they will also be showing some kind of proactiveness in attending this kind of webinars in the future. So please do that if you have some time, not today, not on Sunday, but on sometime next week. That's all from my end.
So thank you, team, for your active participation. And winners, please do send your address to the email ID which we are mentioned in the comment section.
So yeah, thank you everyone for spending your valuable time with us all through the entire week. So for me as a moderator, it was a wonderful experience. Even though I had 2.5 years of experience with RPA, I have learned a lot through these sessions. And I've also seen professional growth on my LinkedIn profile and made new people with the same interest. So I would suggest all of you, if you are interested, then you can do participate as the moderator or speakers if there is any another series in the future. So yeah. And thank you, Nikhilesh. Thank you so much for taking this initiative. And yeah, that's here I end my few words. Thank you.
And thanks to my co-MVPs. So most of my friends have also joined this call. Thanks for your supporting, guys.